I'm A.E. Perkins, and this is the Beyond Our Vision podcast. It is February 27th, 1962. As the sound of attack aircraft shattered the gray afternoon, Madame New ran for cover in the presidential palace. She raced toward the safety of the building's cellar with the rest of the family. Unwilling to wait for assistance, she jumped from the first floor and cleared all the steps before falling heavily and breaking her arm. A bomb dropped by the mutinous pilots landed in the president's reading room, but it failed to detonate. The smoke and flames in the palace cleared as the attackers made their aerial escape. But the ruling family of South Vietnam survived assassination, and Madame New, the self-proclaimed First Lady, was determined to make the government's political enemies pay the price for their failure. By the spring of 1963, a year after the assassination attempt, the South Vietnamese government's oppression of the Buddhist majority had reached a breaking point. When police in the former imperial capital of Hue confronted a crowd protesting a ban on flying the Buddhist flag, they fired gunshots at the protesters and killed 9. 14 more were wounded, and the slaughter only added momentum to public disapproval of the South Vietnamese leadership, which blamed the violence on Viet Cong agitators. More protests followed, augmented by hunger strikes organized by Buddhist monks, as the government refused to recognize religious equality for the Buddhists. A particular demonstration made its way down one of Saigon's major boulevards on June 11, 1963. A 66-year-old Tibetan monk named Thich Quang Duc started the day among the hundreds of demonstrators on the street. The procession included 300 holy men and women, unafraid to be struck down in the hail of gunfire that would surely come. Calm and serene in his saffron robe, Thich Quang Duc stepped from a car leading the protest and sat in the lotus position on a cushion in the middle of the boulevard. 2 other monks poured gasoline on him from a 5-gallon can. The elderly monk bowed his head and held his fingertips together in prayer. The demonstrators watched, some kneeling in sympathy with Thich Quang Duc, encircling him behind a phalanx of security officers, tensing themselves for the inevitable moment to come. The police officers suddenly turned to face the demonstrators, their backs to Quang Duc and the foreign journalists who converged on the spot. The monk produced a match, struck it, and set himself alight. Flames erupted and enveloped Thich Quang Duc immediately, his charred corpse toppling slowly backwards amid a fire no one dared to address. The police officers twisted back to witness the sight, watching in awe alongside everyone else on the street. The New York Times journalist David Halberstam wrote, "As he burned, he never moved a muscle, never uttered a sound. His outward composure in sharp contrast to the wailing people around him." Associated Press photographer Malcolm Brown's stunning film of the self-immolation moved the collective conscience of people around the world, with the exception of the South Vietnamese government and especially Madame New. When asked about the incident, she alleged that the monk was intoxicated, and the demonstrators only showed their lack of self-sufficiency by using imported gasoline for the fire. "I would clap hands at seeing another monk barbecue show," she noted, "for one cannot be responsible for the madness of others." 7 other monks soon followed Thich Quang Duc's sacrificial example. The Madam arrived in the United States on a speaking tour in October, notably refusing Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson's advice to tone down her antagonistic remarks. Indeed, she accused her hosts of undermining the South Vietnamese combat effort and characterized the Kennedy administration as soft on communism. As October 1963 progressed into November, Madame Nhieu was still on the road. But back in Vietnam, with the agreement of their United States counterparts, South Vietnamese generals carried out a coup d'etat that removed the president from power. American officials hoped for the president's physical safety, but the South Vietnamese military would not make any promises. The president and the Madame's husband escaped the rebel forces momentarily by agreeing to surrender with the promise of a safe departure from Vietnam. Instead, their captors executed them in the back of an armored personnel carrier. Madame Nhieu learned about the coup while in Beverly Hills, California. She and her children were sent to safety aboard a plane headed for Rome. From there, Madame Nhieu denounced the United States government, accusing it of backing the South Vietnam generals and predicting a disastrous future for Americans in the war. Despite the circumstances, over the years, Madame Nhieu refused to be silenced. She continued to give interviews to reporters. The last one came in 2004, 4 years before her own death. It went to a Vietnamese Catholic newspaper, which stated she was living in Paris and writing her memoirs. Madame Nhieu's image staked out a cultural corner amid the various magazine covers and articles depicting the political strife between South Vietnam and the United States. Her gun-wielding visage is archived as an early version of mid-20th century feminism. Her name was adopted by a Sydney, Australia restaurant in 2007. But perhaps most dramatically, her words live on as a footnote to the story of the Vietnam War in the early 1960s. Immediately following the 1962 attempt on her family's life in the Saigon Presidential Palace, Madame Nhieu said, "I believe all the devils in hell are against us, but we will triumph eventually because we have the devil on our side." You've been listening to the Beyond Our Vision podcast. For more about the story you just heard, read Beyond Our Vision, Stories from the Decade That Changed Everything, available on Amazon.com. I'm A.E. Perkins. See you next time.